Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it is fair to say that this brewery are known mainly for their big imperial stouts, their fruity sours, but in more recent times as well for their different kinds of IPA. In my opinion, they are one of the most solid and consistent craft breweries here in Sweden, and I definitely recommend trying them out if you get the chance. So, yeah, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that we have had from them before. It's one of their latest releases, and I do enjoy just keeping up to date with what these guys are doing. So, hopefully, it's another good one. Hopefully, it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So, yeah, for this review, then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. We're going to go a little bit out to the east of the city to Landvetter, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Dugges Brewery. So this particular beer is called Wide Awake. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a double IPA. So yeah, we've had many double IPAs from these guys over the years. This one was released as part of the local Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for February of 2022. And I think this is the first beer I've ever had from Dugges in a can, so that is quite interesting. I'm not sure if they released some beers in cans last month in January, but this is certainly the first one I've reviewed here on the channel in a can. So that is pretty cool actually, because it's always been the bottles that we've had from Dugges Brewery before. And I do have another beer to review from them out of a bottle quite soon actually, so keep your eyes peeled for that video. But yeah, 7.5% double IPA, this one. Not 100% sure whether it's going to be a full New England or exactly what it's going to be, because I read it's a little bit more bitter, but it does say on the ingredients list there are wheat and oats in there. So maybe this is going to be a little bit more of a kind of just hybrid IPA or something like that. But always nice to try the new Dugges beers. Let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dugges Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit more once again about Dugges Brewery. So Dugges Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Landvetter, which is on the eastern outskirts of Gothenburg, Göteborg, on the Swedish west coast, and the company was originally established back in 2005 in Mölndal, to the south of the city, by Mikael Engström Dugge, whom of course it takes its name from. But a few years prior to this, Mikael had met an Englishman who was selling second-hand breweries, and this really got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So he studied the very complex Swedish alcohol laws, visited various other breweries around the country, and he started buying equipment to put together his own brewery, which culminated with the opening of the first Dugges Brewery facility in Mölndal back in 2005. Over the following years, they continued to develop new recipes and expand the brewery capacity, but by 2009 they had outgrown the original facility, and so they moved up to Landvetter in 2010. So the older brewery had a capacity of 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year at maximum, so about 150,000 litres, but the new brewery started off with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres, and this has been more than doubled in recent years. But over the years, the brewery became very well known for a few different things. They used to be called Dugges Öl och Porter Brewery in the early days, if I remember correctly, and at this point they were producing mainly big imperial stouts, but also big fruity sours actually. So two of the iconic beers from this brewery would be the Egypt, which is their imperial stout. I'm not sure if they still do the original recipe, but I highly recommend you check it out if you get the chance. I think they tend to release Big Egypt at least once a year, and also the Tropic Thunder, which was a collaboration they did with Stillwater Artisanals. For me, those are two of the iconic Dugas beers. So yeah, Egypt, Tropic Thunder, make sure you check them out. But in more recent times, of course, they have been further investing in their barrel aging program, which is quite extensive these days. And in the last maybe 2-3 years, they've been producing a lot more IPAs, and the IPAs have been going down very, very well. But they're also one of the co-owners in the two Brewers beer bars that you'll find in Gothenburg. The original one is Tredje Långgatan, and I think the other one, I forget what street the other one's on, but yeah, Tredje Långgatan is the original one if you want to go there. But they own this bar along with All In Brewing, who are one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in Gothenburg, and I believe that Mikael Engström's daughter Ida, along with her husband John, also have a share in it, and they of course run the Electric Nurse Brewery, who have for many years brewed their beers at Dugas Bryggeri. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Dugas Bryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and of course you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But as I said, for me, Dugas Bryggeri are one of the iconic Swedish craft breweries, and as I say, Egypt and Tropic Thunder are two beers that you really need to check out from these guys. Although in fairness, I think it is just the Big Egypt that you find these days. I would love to see Dugas re-release an anniversary edition of the original Egypt, maybe for their 20th anniversary, something like that. But yeah, let's leave it at that. As I say, check out the links in the video description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But I would point out the number that's listed there for the beers that they've produced on Untappd. I think it's something like 45. They've produced way more than that. So that's the one inaccurate thing about Untappd that I can think of when it comes to Dugas Bryggeri. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one, as you can see, it is quite similar to what we would have had on the bottles previously. There you can see the Dugas Bryggeri symbol. You still get this little guy on the side here. So what does this one say? All hops all over. Yeah, pretty nice. They've put a little D on it for Dugas, which I think is a nice touch as well. That was something I always wanted them to put on their bottle caps, of course. But yeah, you've also got this symbol on the back here for Dugas Bryggeri as well. So yeah, the hops in this one, I had a little look on the website, because the website is a bit better these days and tells you a little bit more about the beer. But yeah, this one, in the malt base, it has barley malt, wheat malt and oat. This is why I was saying earlier, I'm not 100% sure if this one is going to be a New England or exactly what it's going to be. But the hops in this one are Idaho 7, they've got Citra, Simcoe and Sabro, all in the cryo form incidentally, and Columbus. So we know all of these hops quite well. They're all American. Idaho 7 is about 14% alpha acid. It gives you lovely soft kind of tropical fruit notes. Citra we know quite well, about again 14% alpha acid, big soft juicy mango and quite a lemon limey zesty kind of thing. Simcoe, beautiful soft passion fruit, and a New England IPA, about 12% alpha acid, and then Sabro's that big kind of 14% kind of tangerine orange, but also coconutty hop. And Columbus, of course, I suspect will be used as the bittering hop in this, quite a big spicy floral aromatic sort of thing. I think that's about 12% alpha acid, if I remember rightly. But I believe I paid somewhere in the region of 40 Swedish kronor for this can, so that's about €4, somewhere in the region of like £3.50 and maybe about $5 American, maybe $4.75, something like that. So just so that all of you watch from across the world have a little bit of that price reference. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 7.5% double IPA, this one, Wide Awake from Dugas Bryggeri. So here we go. Yeah, I think this is going to be a New England. Yeah. So it's not... The other interesting thing I should point out with this beer, and I forgot to mention that earlier, is that Dugas have very, very many different series of beers, and it was the Bite series that were the West Coast ones, of course. The Fresh and the Crush were the New England ones. I think the Fresh were the lower ABV ones, the Crush were the bigger ones. Were the lower ABV ones, and the Fresh, I think, were the slightly higher ones. But yeah, Dugas Bryggeri have lots of different series of beer, but there was no series mentioned on this can actually, so maybe with the cans they've kind of dropped the different series, I don't know. But anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured absolutely beautifully. So before the head disappears, the beer poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head, very, very nice kind of small bubbles there. It's fading away to be a really nice thin foamy layer, but around the edge of the glass it's got a little bit of that thicker character to it. But yeah, the way that that goes together is very, very nice. This is a very, very pretty looking IPA, I have to say. Just look at that. Not that any of the other Dugas beers look bad or anything, but that's a very, very good looking beer, I have to say. So in terms of its colour, I think it's fair to describe this one as being a very bright yellow, kind of akin to a mango juice. I always like comparing New England IPAs to different kind of fruit juices, because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. In this case, the wort boil is going to be about 90 minutes. But yeah, any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do will, of course, affect the colour of the beer as well. But quite often you don't really have to care about that with New England IPAs. But I'm pretty sure, just going from the appearance of this is a New England. But yeah, level of haze on this one. For a 7.5%er, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest that I've come across actually. But yeah, the one that it's actually not even as soupy and gloopy as the Overtone 6.6% that I reviewed in the video that I filmed before this one. But yeah, remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on 1, the oat and the wheat content, and 2, the different yeast that you use. So yeah, there's no real rule for that in terms of the ABV scale, but yeah, it can vary from brewery to brewery and recipe to recipe. So yeah, just need to see. Yeah, you just need to think about individual beers in this case then. So yeah, nothing really surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. It does look quite similar to what we've had from Dugas before, and I should point that out, that the Dugas New England IPAs I've had in the past have not been the soupiest and gloopiest, but they've always been very nice. So yeah, nothing else we need to say about the appearance of this beer. Let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we go then. Very curious about this. Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I just got a wee touch of it on my top there. But anyway, yeah. So I'm going to say straight away, first impression of this beer is that it's actually quite bready and barley malt leaning, this one. And when they were talking about, they talked about it on the website as being a little bit more bitter and things. And I don't get all that much bitterness. You know, if you had a big bitter kind of West Coast IPA, for example, you would expect a bit of kind of piney resin and floral aromaticity and stuff. But this beer actually really comes across as a kind of very bready. It's almost got a little touch of a kind of wit beer type quality to it in a sense, or a white IPA. It's got a little bit of that kind of vibe to it. But yeah, soft and juicy, a little bit of a kind of grassy character to it. It's really just, it's really quite interesting actually, but I'm going to say aroma wise it is quite nice. So let's break that aroma down for you a wee bit more and just describe it a little touch more in depth. So, backbone of the beer, definitely a little touch of bread crust in there, but a lot of soft kind of white bready character out of it. I would say the wheat in this one's a little bit more prominent. And as I've said before, for me when it comes to New England IPAs, and we're not 100% sure exactly what kind of IPA this one is, to be sure, but with New England IPAs, they can go in kind of 6 different directions. So they can be kind of farmhousey and yeasty, rye leaning and grainy. That's more common in American brewed ones. It can be wheaty and bitey, oaty creamy, barley malt leaning bready, or they can be a little bit more sort of like Werther's Original, kind of sweet, like brown sugary and sweet. West Coast IPAs, of course, can go in a different direction. They can be more kind of biscuity and bready, or they can be a little bit more kind of oily and caramelly. So this one, in a sense, it's a little bit more like the kind of bready side of a New England IPA, but it does have some of the, you know, bready, biscuity elements that you'd expect of a West Coast. So maybe we have to term this one just an American IPA. So yeah, it's interesting to think about this. But yeah, backbone of this beer, absolutely nice little bit of a kind of bread crusty backbone, some soft white bread in there. You can smell the wheat coming out of this at the back of the nose. You do get a little bit of that wheaty bitiness, but at the same time it almost has some of those kind of banana-y, those sort of banana-y, clovey esters that you might expect of like a wit beer or a white IPA or even a Hefeweizen. Actually, there's a little bit of that kind of vibe going on with this beer. So yeah. And I do remember that Dugas had a series of wheat beers. I don't know if they're going to repeat that or do any more to that in the next little while, but yeah, kind of interesting to think about that. But yeah, definitely, the more that I smell of it as well, I get a little bit of wheaty bitiness comes out of the back of the nose, a little bit of that doughy, yeasty, kind of banana sort of thing in there as well. But you've also got a lovely little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity element to this one too, which I think works. I think works really nicely. The more that you smell of this, the more you're going to get a little bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of character in this one. Oddly enough, the oats are a little bit hard to detect in this. You can just smell a little bit of the kind of creamy, smooth oaty character underneath all of that biscuity side of things. But yeah, the aroma that you get out of this, I think, is pretty nice. Yeah, malty side of things. Can't really complain with this one. It's really nice and fresh and actually quite light. As I say, a few white IPA elements in there and stuff. But yeah, gets a thumbs up from me. In terms of the hoppy side of things, then I don't think we need to say any more about the malty side of the beer. The green component on this one is quite... it's not too prominent either. You do get a little bit of earthiness out of it. If you take the aroma in deeply enough, you get a little bit of a... there is a wee touch of that spicy, that slightly spicy sort of thing, which is something that you would associate with, Columbus. You would definitely associate it with that. But on the, on the green component, I think the grassiness is the most prominent thing here for me. It's a very kind of smooth, grassy aroma that you get out of it. So yeah, I remember that, as we said, the Sabro, Simcoe and Citra that are in this one are all cryoform. So I remember that the cryoform gives you a really oily, grassy sort of thing, and you can pick that out of this beer quite nicely actually. But let's look at the fruity side of it. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's quite interesting because I actually get quite a bit of a pungenty, lemony, citrusy, zesty sort of thing. So I think the Citra is coming out of this one a little bit more. But yeah, fruity wise, yeah, lovely little bit of a more, there's a wee touch of a more pungent passion fruit in there, which I think will be from the Citra. Bit of a softer passion fruit as well, which will be from the yeah, a little bit of a stronger passion fruit, softer passion fruit in there. Quite a juicy mango, of course. That's going to be from the Citra and from the Idaho 7. But you get a lot of complexity to that tropical side of things. There's definitely some apricot in there and a wee bit of pineapple. So all these kind of dry, lighter tropical fruits that you're getting are going to be from the Idaho 7. Absolutely. But then at the front of the nose, you're getting more. You are definitely getting more of a kind of orangey character at this one. I think the Sabro, the more that you smell of this beer, it starts to get a little bit more oily in the nose, and it's the Sabro that comes out. You can smell a wee bit of the coconutty character underneath, but yeah, the Sabro-y notes come out later on. So there's a lot of tropical fruit complexity in there, but I think the orangey, coconutty thing from the Sabro is perhaps the most pungent of all the fruity notes. So yeah, the Citra, Simcoe and Idaho 7 are all kind of mixing in together, but the Sabro really is the one that pushes its way out a little bit more. But the Citra, of course, will be contributing to a little bit of that lemony, zesty kind of side of this beer too. So yeah, this is a really interesting one in terms of its fruity composition and just its general maltiness. So I have to say I'm quite curious to see what this beer is going to deliver in terms of flavour, because the aroma is quite different. But as I always say, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we try this one then. So this is the Wide Awake, a double IPA at 7.5% ABV from Dugas Brewery in Landvetter, just outside of Gothenburg here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah. It's interesting. It's quite a light beer, that one, actually. This is quite different from the other IPAs I've had from Duyas in recent times, come to think of it. Yeah. Now, this one, it's interesting because it really does have a wee bit of an almost just wit beer type element to it. It's almost like the backbone of the beer is a wit beer, but then the other stuff that's coming out of it is almost a bit like a white IPA. Yeah, this one really reminds me of that. I had a white IPA recently from I forget which brewery it was now, but I'm pretty sure it was either a Swedish or a Danish brewery. They released it explicitly as a white IPA, and it was really interesting because the white IPA is a cross between an IPA and a kind of Belgian wit beer. This one really reminds me of that. This is an interesting one. So thumbs up to Duyas for doing something a wee bit different. Was it the Cloud series that they used to call the wheat beers that they had? But this one, it's almost a little bit like a cross of something from the Fresh series, which was one of the New England IPA series they did, and also something from their more wheaty series. So I think it's fair to say that this this IPA is definitely more of a wheaty leaning one, but it could potentially cross the line into wit beer territory. I mean, no, it doesn't say it's got coriander or anything in it, but the further you go into the aftertaste, it really does almost give you a wee bit of that coriander type vibe to it, which is interesting. So yeah, this is something a bit different from Duyas. That's absolutely fair to say. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? So backbone of the beer. You can feel that nice, and we talk about the middle and the back third of the palate. There's a nice little bit of a a bread crusty kind of backbone there. On top of that, you get some soft white bready character to it. But spread within that beer, you really do get a little bit of graininess and a little bit of that kind of crackery, Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing coming out of it. So that's really interesting as well. So yeah, to say, we talk about the middle third of the palate. A little bit of bread crust, soft kind of quite puffy white bread in there. Does get a little bit grey, but you can feel a wee bit of a Jacob's cream crackery sort of vibe mixing in with all of that. On top of it though, you can feel the wheat, and the wheat does actually it almost thickens out the white bready layer a little bit, but as I say, the whole white bready thing in this beer really is quite fluffy and soft in a way. But yeah, this is definitely one of the more kind of grainy, wheaty leaning IPAs that I've had in recent times. And as I say, there is just something about this beer. There is, toward the back of that middle third of your palate, you do almost get just a little bit of a coriandery, spicy sort of thing going on. But sitting on top of that middle third of your palate, you get a nice wee bit of a smooth oaty character there as you go down the middle, the kind of middle line of your palate. You can feel there's a nice wee oaty, there's a little bit of a dense oaty character in there. Yeah, you can feel that nice in the middle of your palate, just in the middle kind of trench. There's a wee bit of a kind of smooth, oaty, thick character coming out of this one, and that's nice. But as you spread out towards the edges of your palate, it's got a wee bit of a more kind of dry, powdery, oaty note there. So yeah, the oats in this one are doing some interesting things. But then sitting on top of the oaty layer, as I say, you almost get a little bit of the kind of, there is a little bit of a slightly banana-y, clovey sort of thing going on between the wheat and the oaty character in this beer. If you go to the dead centre of your palate, there's a little circle there right in the middle of your tongue, and you maybe get just a wee touch of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this beer. And that, of course, at 7.5%, it's going to show you a little bit of booziness. But yeah, this beer really has a lot of wit beer elements going on for me. I don't think there's anything else we can really say about the middle third of the palate with this. But yeah, it's definitely a very interesting concoction. this one, I have to say. So, on the back third of the palate, then I think we can focus on that. The border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of bread crusty build up with this one. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. But as I say, you get some of the kind of clovey, banana-y, coriander-y sort of flavours mixing up in this one. But the base of the back third of the palate is definitely still bread crusty. On top of that, you can feel that the white bread is a little bit thicker, which I think goes together really nicely. But again, it's a wee bit more grainy. You can feel the wheat creeping over a little bit more into the back third of the palate as well. And it has a little bit of bitiness. And then on top of that, you're getting the yeasty sort of thing. And I think the yeastiness in this beer is really quite big, actually. So you get a little bit more of that dry. You definitely get a little bit more of that kind of dry you get a little bit of that dry bread crusty sort of thing. You can feel there's a bit more of a dense doughy character to it, but also some of these banana and clovey flavours are mixing as well. But on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller, and then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together into the middle third of the palate. And yeah, you can feel those flavours a bit more condensed there. But that covers the malty and yeasty side of things. Let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer. So the back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit more of a kind of earthiness going on. But as you move further forward, you get a little touch of a kind of herbally sort of thing. And as you push further forward into the front corners of the palate, you'll get a little touch of a more... you will get a wee bit more of a kind of that deeper kind of spicy floral aromaticity that you would normally get from the Columbus there. So I think the Columbus has maybe been used as an early addition hop in this, because you do get a wee bit of that there. So yeah, remember, New England IPAs rely more on late addition and dry hopping, and of course that doesn't give you as much bitterness as the early addition hopping does. But yeah, that's interesting for sure. So, on the front curve of your palate, you do get a nice kind of you get quite a bit of grassiness out of the beer. It's almost a little touch zesty, but yeah, I like how this is. I do like how this is going together in that sense. But yeah, the grassy, I think the green component for me, it's actually the grassy zestiness is coming out of this, and as I said earlier, I think that comes from the cryo additions of the hop to this beer. So yeah, it's really nice. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the fruitiness then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in this beer again. So yeah, you can feel that there. And the base of the front third of your palate is like a soft white bread with just a wee touch of bread crust, and on top of that you get the nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on the fruity flavours then. So, fruity side of this beer. At the back of that front third of your palate, then you can feel there's a wee touch of a quite soft and quite juicy passion fruit. So that's going to be the Citra and the Simcoe that are giving you that. But I think the Simcoe is pushing the softer side of things. But as you move further forward, it really evolves to be a little bit more mango-like. And underneath, you've got, underneath, you really have a very nice, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of soft apricot-y, papaya, pineapple sort of thing. So that's the Idaho 7 that's going to give you these kind of softer notes. But then as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, it's really, you can feel the coconut in there, but there's that big oily kind of tangerine orange from the Sabro going on, and that starts to dominate the further you go into the aftertaste. But compared to the aroma, I think the balance between the tropical side of things and the more orangey, citrusy side is a little bit more, it's a little bit more level, if that makes sense. So yeah, the way that goes together is very nice actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, fruity side of this beer, quite oily as well, again because of the cryo hops. And I think on this note we can move on and round off the review with a look at the mouthfeel. So This one for me, pushing towards the top end of mid-body, the carbonation is quite smooth. It's quite an oily mouthfeel, this one overall. As I said, stylistically for me, this beer is actually a little bit more like a white IPA in some ways. I'd be curious to hear. Dougas just called it a double IPA, but I think there's a few wit beer elements in here, which makes me want to call it a white IPA. So I'd be curious to hear Dougas' thoughts on that, in fact. But on the bitterness side of things, I don't find this beer to be overly bitter. But I think it might well be pushing 40 or 50 IBUs in that sense. So yeah, you can get, modern IPAs like this, but yeah, it's not the same as the old days when you had 80, 90 IBU West Coast IPAs. Malt base, as we said, is quite smooth. Not much sweetness to this one, but mainly quite a thick sort of note in there. And of course, I think the yeasty character plays a bigger role in the malty yeasty side of this beer as well. And the fruity side of things is quite well balanced between the tropical and more zesty side. But the way that this beer goes together is really nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. So yeah, this one was, I think we can leave it there. This one was the Wide Awake, a double IPA at 7.5% ABV from Dougas Bryggeri. Actually very like a white IPA from back in the day. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dougas Bryggeri, and we will return to these guys at some point very soon. I'm sure I do have a big Imperial Stout to look at from them, so you can look forward to that over the next little while. But check out this one in the meantime, and do try some Dougas beers if you haven't already. Tropic Thunder and Egypt, as I said, are some of their iconic beers. Slàinte, Skål, cheers. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you in the next review.